Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is well. Thank you all for attending our CPD session today. I'll take you through the introductory slides and then we'll get into the content. And the intent is to have this all wrapped up completely within 1 hour. So if I start rambling, Paul is here to referee me and make sure that we stay on task. The purpose of our CPD sessions, the reason we've decided to create this CPD webinar series, is to help businesses, whether that be health and safety professionals who are going through their own development, operational supervisors and managers, and those who are responsible for the activities, being able to go back to basics to understand what it is that legislation in the UK asks of us, and to be able to put in place practical measures so that we can proceed to make sure that we are delivering on our expectations. Okay. Our sessions over the next few months, we're going to look at accident reporting and investigation today. In a month's time, we're going to be looking at our prosecution sentencing guidelines, so understanding when businesses are prosecuted, how that fine is calculated, and what mitigations go into those, and what aggravators go into those as well. So making sure that we understand those is an important element for when we are building our business cases for making business improvements. We're also going to look at PURE, so looking at provision and use of work equipment, how we carry out assessments and how we embed those assessments into our operational controls. And then the last point there just says, what would you like to see in this next? So as we grow our community, and we're going to have people who are attending these sessions live when we run them, we're going to have people attending these when they get to view these on our YouTube stream, kind of after the sessions, when people are looking at these things on the evening when they're all too busy in the day. What do you want to see from these? What are you going to get from these as well? So this isn't just from our minds out into the world, but also getting some opportunity for you guys to feed into us as to what you want to see. The intention is these will last around an hour or less, so it should be a quick learning topic. It shouldn't be affecting our day-to-day activities. We should be able to get on with them, take the message on, and then quick sense check as to how we're doing in our own businesses, and then back into the day-to-day activities of risk management. Okay, so firstly, the question we should probably answer to begin with is, who is SRM? So Scott Risk Management is a business that I founded just over 7 years ago. Since I originally started on a single contract working for National Grid, providing health and safety support, the business has been through a phenomenal amount of growth. We have our consulting division where we are still providing that consulting service to businesses, whether that be for business support or project delivery support. We have our training, which is our in-person, our remote training, such as sessions like this. And then we have our e-learning, which is our approved e-learning for health and safety and business skills. We also have a small recruiting division where we recruit specifically within the health and safety sector. So we're looking at bringing health and safety managers into businesses and providing ongoing support for that business while the recruitment process is taking place. We then have, going back to the top of this, our SRM Genie platform, which is our digital health and safety platform and consulting support combined. So that covers all of your policy and procedure, delivery, sign off, visibility to your workforce, all of your forms and checklists, risk assessments, toolbox talks, or your COSH assessments, all of your day-to-day management tools, all in one platform. We have our inspection and our audit platform in there as well, so we can carry out all of our internal checks, all of our supplier monitoring. Aptly for today, our accident and near miss reporting and management process of being able to get our reporting in, and also being able to go out and carry out investigations using our platform. All of those things will inevitably bring out actions where we're looking at business improvements or non-compliance that needs to be addressed. We have an action management process for this. And then there is an induction and onboarding platform as well for bringing new employees into the business. So that takes you through all your induction process, your DSE checks, your individual assessments, where we've got people coming into businesses that have additional needs to make sure that they are all brought in and welcomed and onboarded in the best possible way that we can. That platform is growing. We're bringing in internal training into this as well. So next month we will be able to highlight through a separate session how our internal training will operate, which will be separate to your external formal training, but how we demonstrate internal training when we're doing, on-the-job training, and we need to provide training and verification. So all of that is here as well. We also have our Stay Safe podcast. That podcast is all around 10-minute toolbox talks that you can use within your businesses. They're all free to download, whether that be through things like Spotify or Apple or YouTube. You can grab those and use the ones that are most appropriate, or deliver the whole series to your business, and they are free and available for people to use. Again, going back to what you want to see, if you have a particular sector in there that you would like to see information on in that Toolbox Talk space, do let us know. We've done construction, we've done engineering, we've done some work in the chemistry industry. So anywhere where you want to see another series of those, if we get enough interest, we can certainly look at doing those as well. Now you know the business. You've got the pleasure of myself and Paul today. So I'm a chartered fellow of IOSH. I have a master's degree in safety and risk management. I am the founder and managing director of Scott Risk Management. I have experience across a number of industries, including nuclear and defence and construction and heavy manufacturing. So kind of a whole suite and a whole range across the industry space. I am also a specialist accident and root cause analysis trained person as well. So I've done some additional training beyond what you would normally be taught through our kind of standard IOSH and NEBOSH type routes. We have Paul with us today. So Paul has been with the business since September. He spends a lot of time looking after all of our online space, all of our marketing and our system content. So he looks after all of the online social media, all of our video production, whether that is training or inductions, where we provide bespoke inductions for our clients, all of the podcast editing. So I get the easy part where I just get to talk. Paul has to turn that into something that people want to listen to. So that's the challenge in itself. Paul will be managing the Q&A for the CPD sessions. So he will be jumping into that Q&A space to make sure that we answer everybody's questions today. So as we've said, we'll go through the CPD content. So we've got a range of information here going through the reporting and investigation process today. We'll then put all the Q&A in there. So if you have got a question, use that Q&A space, drop it in there. Paul will catch those at the end. If we do run short of time, every question will be answered. We'll send out a Q&A sheet afterwards to make sure that everything is responded to. So don't worry. And the question that usually comes up first, I've answered already. Yes, the slides can be made available. So if you do want those, there's an email address in a second where you can ask for those, and we'll send them across to you. Post-session, if you do want a CPD certificate, if you want that to submit into your IOSH portfolio or your workplace portfolios, wherever that may be, if you email Paul, so Paul's email address is on the screen if anybody wants to take a shot of that. If you request your CPD certificate through Paul, we will get that to you. And if you want to look back at any of the content from this session, maybe not immediately, but maybe in the future, this will be available on our YouTube channel, which is listed there as well. Okay, and that will be sent out in a link as well from Paul when you get your CPD certificate. Okay. So looking at today's session, so we're not looking at theory, we're not looking at our overly complex processes and how all of those can really convolute the accident and investigation space. What we're looking at is real practical approaches that can make big differences in your workplace, whether that be about your safety culture, your improvement, moving away from the blame culture that we have in some businesses where it's always kind of us looking at what the person did wrong and then just trying to address it at that level. Okay, so we're going to look at what reporting looks like and what investigation should look like, what we should be looking at when we're looking at root causes, and then looking at how we make lasting business improvements as well. Okay. So why does it matter? That's the usual one, and I'm not going to teach anybody how to suck eggs with this. You know, we're all professionals in this space. Accidents occur all the time. We can't hide from the fact that does happen. It is a part of business that accidents will happen, even in the places with the best health and safety performance. But when we think about the causes and the impacts, we always have to focus on we've got a personal injury element to this, where a person is injured. If that's minor, that's a minor inconvenience. If you've got somebody who's seriously injured, then that could lead to serious long amount of time out of work, financial implications for them, implications for their home life and how they're looking after their children, looking after their houses, how they're interacting in society. There's this ripple effect that can come from an incident in the workplace that can be affecting the individual, affecting their families, affecting colleagues around them that might have witnessed an accident. local communities are affected because all of this becomes knowledge and people become concerned for others that they know work in your business. So the personal injury impact, although we focus on the individual, has a big, wide implication in itself. We have the business disruption. When an accident occurs, we have all of our investigation time for ourselves. We might have third-party investigations, which in the UK is obviously the health and safety executive or the police. If we've had a serious incident, they will take as much time as they want. They won't be worried about our operations and our financial impacts and the damage that might cause. They will come in and do their investigation to the best of their ability with the time that they want to make sure that they do so. So thinking about business disruption, that very quickly becomes a big calculation in itself. We have our legal exposure risk. So if we have a legal compliance issue that has resulted in that accident, we then also have the ongoing legal issue of potential fines, imprisonments. It becomes quite a serious conversation very, very quickly. And then the one that we don't ever really pay too much attention to, but reputational damage. Most people will have to be involved in tendering, and we know that serious accidents have to be reported on tenders for, in some cases, 3 years or 5 years, which can impact our ability to retain and bring in new work. We have the reputational damage from exposure from the media, where people are reporting on incidents that have happened. We know that by association, if we have kind of blue chip clients and serious clients that are really protective of their brand and their reputation, your implication in an incident could be the difference between you continuing to work with them and not continuing to work with them. So all of these are why accidents really matter. We have to make sure we take all of the learning opportunity that comes from us when we are doing our reporting and investigations. So right back to the beginning of this, what should be reported? It's not just about the serious stuff we want to be reporting, the minor stuff we want to be reporting, the kind of near misses and the things that might have happened. So accidents, any injury, however minor, we should be reporting. We should be learning from that, even if it's in a minor capacity. Incidents including property damage, vehicle incidents, these are things we want to be learning from as well. Near misses, anywhere where something could have happened, but it hasn't quite happened that way. So we haven't had the injury or the property damage, but we might have done. They are the best places for us to look at, to learn about how something could have gone wrong and how we have an opportunity to put it right before an injury does happen at the next time it happens. Dangerous occurrences, we have a list of particular dangerous occurrences from the HSE that they want to be reported on. So things like equipment failures, we have to make sure we're learning from those as well as reporting, so that we can look at it as a wider industry as well as just within our business. And as you said, RIDDOR, so serious injuries require HSE notification, right down to those over 7-day incidents that we have to make sure we're reporting as well. And we need to have a process within our businesses that captures when we hit those thresholds and we report in a timely manner. Within our businesses, we have to make sure that we understand how our reporting is happening. And there are some basic process steps to that and some kind of good practice recommendation in this. Firstly, it has to be a process that is available to all staff. It is no good putting it on a computer if only half of your workforce have access to a computer. You can't be relying on somebody trying to pass on an incident or a near miss report via word of mouth and asking somebody else to do the reporting for you. It's not considered sufficient. So it has to be a process that is available to everybody. There has to be clear reporting lines. When something is reported, who is it reported to, and who is going to be looking after the investigation? Within your business, it might be that all investigations are carried out by your health and safety team. It might be, as it is in some businesses, where it's a business function responsibility to carry out investigations at that lower level to begin with, and then possibly an escalation to your health and safety team or your consultant. So making sure that whatever those arrangements are, they are clear and understood by everybody. You need a consistent method. People need to know what is expected of them and then what they will expect in return. So making sure that the method for reporting is clear and it is accessible so that people can do that when they need to. My personal recommendation to this is to have a 2-stage reporting process. When something has happened, you want an immediate verbal notification to a supervisor. So a supervisor of the work area where an incident has taken place, making sure that they are aware. What we don't want is for somebody to leave a shop floor or leave a workspace to go and complete an incident form without informing the person who is supervising that area. So the best practice is typically within 1 hour of it occurring or as soon as possible once the incident is brought under control. So once we've done our initial response, we've provided first aid, we've got people in ambulance if we need to. At that point, we need to be reporting that it's happened if our supervisors or managers aren't already aware. Okay. And then secondly, getting that formal report completed, that formal written documentation. And we're removing barriers by doing this so that people feel confident about reporting because they know it is taken seriously and we have the right process in place. My recommendation in this is that you have in your company policy, if you don't already, by the end of the same working day. Okay, so if we have processes in place and we ask for that to be done by the same working day, it means that all the information is fresh, it's accurate. We don't have any issues where we question individuals as to whether or not they've been hurt on the evening and come back the next day and said it's a work-related issue. If we make it really clear that we want it by the end of their working day, all of the ambiguity and all of the concern goes away from that process. Our first report, so making sure we know what good looks like. So we need to know from that immediate documented report who was involved, what's happened, when it's happened, and where it's happened. And making sure that those are specific will make all the difference in how you respond when you're carrying out your investigation. If it says where and it just has the address or the name of your company, that's not as good as saying it happened in this particular building, in this particular room, with this particular piece of equipment. That tells us exactly where we need to go to carry out our investigation. We need to know about any injuries that have occurred and any witnesses that were present. We don't need the full witness statement at that point. We just need to know who was there so that we can go and obtain witness interviews and witness statements. Any immediate actions that were taken. In most cases, for minor instance, we will put immediate actions in place. So that might be that we've cleaned up, we've barriered off an area, we've stopped people working on a particular machine or a particular process until the investigation is carried out. Get that information in and we know what our holding point is whilst our investigation is ongoing. And then our absolute rock solid, making sure we've got photos of the scene and any related equipment, getting as many of those as possible. It means that we don't have to rely on people trying to remember things, people trying to question whether it's one piece of equipment or another piece of equipment that's similar. It takes all the ambiguity away. It means we've got a clear line of sight with our investigation. If we have a really serious instance where something has resulted in a fatality or something that could have been a fatality, we're not going to look at this straight away. We'd be looking at things like cordoning off the scene. Okay, so we'd be barring off the scene completely so that our investigation can take place as the primary before any return to work. For minor instance, we tend to deal with it in this kind of more accepted route of just putting things right in a temporary manner and then carrying on with our investigation whilst operations continue. Okay, key message, make sure we are capturing facts. So we want people to be writing down in here what the facts are, what did happen, not opinion or thought or anything wider than that. We want clear facts. Our investigation process, why do we do it? What's the benefit to a business? Why do we need, why do we have to spend so much time and effort in this space? Now, the primary element is about preventing reoccurrence. Preventing reoccurrence means doing a thorough investigation so we can identify the root causes. So going in to find whether there are people processes there that are an issue, whether or not we've got plant and equipment issues that are there that we need to address, or whether or not we're just looking at this as a wider business as far as our operating processes. So how do we make sure that happens? Improving our systems so that we make sure it doesn't happen again. Not just saying, oh, that happened, tidy it up, carry on, and away we go. We need to take our time to learn about what's happened and how we prevent it from happening again with robust process change. It is never about blame. As soon as we look at a process and we say, oh, that's because somebody did it wrong, and that's the end of our investigation, it's not sufficient and it will cause a collapse of your accident reporting process because people will not want to report to you for fear that they are just simply going to be blamed. And as a business, it's poor because it means we don't take the opportunity to learn from what has gone on in the business. So being open, honest, frank, and always looking at how we can help improve those processes. If it is something where somebody's done something wrong, does that mean an SOP needs to be changed? Is it something we need to capture in a risk assessment? Is it a training and competence issue? So we can never simply say it's your fault because you did it wrong. There's always something we can do to help them not have that occurrence again. Okay. Investigations effectively follow 4 clear steps. One of the most important things that we can do in this is making sure that we are taking a proportionate approach. We do not need to do a full CSI investigation for somebody tripping over, not properly hurting themselves, and it being a minor occurrence with a minor solution that needs to be put in place. So we have to make sure that we are being proportionate to the incident. Also, on the flip side of that, we've had a serious incident or something that could have been serious. We don't just deal with it with a minor level investigation. We take the appropriate time to make sure we're investigating as thoroughly as required. There's a very good guide. We have it in one of the slides later. In HSG 245, there is a very good matrix that the health and safety exec provide, which looks at the likelihood of the reoccurrence of whatever has happened to the event, how likely is it's going to happen again, and the most significant, most likely cause of outcome. So what we're looking at, we've had somebody fall over, they've tripped, they've grazed their knee, but actually, in reality, it could have been much more serious, in which case that assessment matrix, a little bit like a risk assessment matrix, guides you on what level of investigation you should be carrying out. Regardless of the level of investigation, you're going to follow these kind of key 4 steps. So we're going to make sure we gather our evidence. So all of our photos, we're going to get our witness statements where it's appropriate. We're going to go and look at risk assessments and training and competence. We're going to go and look at all of that information. We're going to go and ask what was going on the day when we do our witness statements to understand the context of what was going on in the business. Was it absolute chaos in there, and that's what's led to one of the causal factors has led to the accident? Or was it actually quite calm and that wasn't something to consider? But we have to gather all that information so that we can ask the right questions of it to work out what our lasting changes are going to be. We want to look at the sequence of events. So what was going on at the time of the incident and what was going on in the lead up to the incident? How was our day going before that? Was everything okay? Was it total carnage? Did something happen where processes changed or people stepped into roles that they don't normally do? Try and build up some of that information. We then want to look at identifying our causes. So as with all of this, we want to try and find what happened. The immediate cause, what was it? We've cut ourselves. What was it with? It was with a knife. We've cut ourselves with a knife. That's our immediate cause. If that was the end of our investigation, it wouldn't really tell us much. That would just be us reporting on the fact, not looking at how we're going to make our change. So we need to be looking at the underlying causes, why that knife, why that process, why at that time? Was there a better way of doing it? Was there a safer way of doing it? And then going into looking at those root causes. Actually, have we got a process where we don't need to be using that knife, that particular incident? Is there a way that we can stop that from happening again, either through changing the way people operate, our processes operate, making sure that we've got a lasting change in place to try to prevent occurrence, always going back to that key element. We're trying to prevent this from happening again. Okay. And then lastly in this, defining the corrective actions. Whether this is training that needs to be done, whether it's an update to an SOP or an update to a risk assessment, if this is a briefing to people to make sure everybody understands what the expectations are in an area so that everybody knows the way of working, making sure we define those corrective actions. So again, making sure that everybody understands what the corrective action is, everybody knows who is responsible for delivering it, everyone is aware of the timescale, and making sure that the timescale is considered reasonable as well, so that we're not asking somebody to do something in a week when it's going to take them at least 2 months, because it's something that's never going to be realistically delivered, and in some cases they just won't try and put the attention on it because they know they're going to fail. If we are reasonable with it and measured with it, and we look at the overall benefit to the business, if we put the right timescales in place and the right support, we make those corrective actions, it helps us to prevent occurrence of that type of accident again. Okay. So some of the common issues, what goes wrong? We have issues where blame culture will often come into this, and that can be something where the investigators with the best will in the world are trying to deliver a solid investigation, but a manager or a senior manager just says, oh no, it's nothing to do with that, it's just because that person was a wally, he doesn't follow the rules, he always does it his own way. Blame culture. Might be right, that person might not follow the rules, that person might not do it the way that we've prescribed. But if we're looking at this in a kind of no blame culture, trying to make lasting change and improvement to our business, I don't think anybody would disagree that it's probably a management issue. We need to be managing that individual to make sure that they are following the prescribed rules, that they are doing it the way that's prescribed by risk assessment and in line with legislation. And the reason for that is that if they don't, they either come with the business on the journey of operating the way that they're being asked, as is required of them as an employee of the business, or you manage that person out of the business. To simply accept, oh, that's the way they always do it, and they never do it the way we ask them to, is a failure of management of the business. So we have to make sure we're always looking at ourselves as the business. How are we allowing this person to have these accidents? How can we prevent them from happening again? Rushing to conclusions, so not picking up the evidence, not reviewing the evidence, not asking the right questions, and just assuming that because we can see one cause, that is clearly the cause. We have to be a little bit more holistic about that and look at how overall we make sure we are making a well-rounded investigation. And a lot of that comes from making sure that we get our evidence in correctly. So making sure our report is in on time. We don't want to report 3 days later. We want it on the day it happened. And then similarly, we don't want to start our investigation in 3 or 4 or 5 days. We want to be starting that as soon as possible, when we've got access to all of the information, we've got access to witness statements that are fresh in people's minds. If we leave things for a week, people start to forget, people talk amongst themselves, they start to misremember their own version of events in favour of a more blended witness statement where everybody's story becomes their own story. So we have to make sure we're doing this properly and getting all of that evidence in correctly. And then we also have to make sure we're not overcomplicating it as well. What we're talking about is a set process that allows us to either carry out a simple or complex investigation with scalability on the depth of information we go to obtain. So we have to be pragmatic and take that assessment of, okay, how likely is it to occur? What is the severity of this if it does occur again? And then looking at how that turns into our investigation standard and our expectation. So we need to make sure when we're doing our investigation that it leads to that meaningful change. If it doesn't make any change to the business, the investigation hasn't delivered on its objective. We're trying to prevent occurrence. The only way we can do that is by making that meaningful change to our business. Okay, so we're not just sitting there saying what happened and that's enough. We are looking in a wider context at how this has helped us to prevent it from happening again, taking that real learning opportunity. And that might be things like updating risk assessments, where we look at a risk assessment and say, oh, we didn't consider that when we wrote the risk assessment. Absolutely valid. No one's failed. It's now become something that we would consider foreseeable because we know it's happened and therefore it can legitimately happen again. Revising training programs. We may have identified that actually we've expected that everybody knows what to do, but we've never actually trained them on how to do it. And that could just be an internal training element, whether that's standing next to somebody who's more experienced and learning it from them, whether that's sitting down and putting in some formal internal training and verification as well. We may look at implementing physical controls. And when we look at things like our hierarchy of control, engineering solutions are much more preferred to documentation. So if we can move away from needing to provide training and signage and PP and all of those things that help protect the individual to engineering controls that protect everybody, then that's always the preferred way of doing that. And if we look at our investigation, we may find that actually there is an engineering control that we've missed or that we've not established that we should look at. And feedback to our teams. If we don't tell them, based on the report, this is the investigation we've carried out and this is what we've learned and this is what we're going to implement, whether that's a change, an improvement, a reinforcing of the standard. If we don't go through all of those, people won't report because they don't know that anything is happening. Okay, so it's important that we bring our workforce back into that conversation at the right time to make sure they understand the outcomes. There are a range of tools that you can use for accident investigation. I'm not going to bore everybody by taking you through all of them. There are as many as you can think to write down. The key thing to remember is that from health and safety legislation, you are not mandated to use any particular type of tool. You are just asked to go and find how you improve the people elements, the process elements, and the plant elements, how you look at that business. Is it something you can do in that to make your changes to prevent the reoccurrence? We don't have to use a particular tool. Now, that said, some of these tools are very useful. And as I said, there are many, many others beyond this. my personal preference is things like 5 why, but there are others as well. So, you know, fishbone diagram helps to break off all those different causal factors, and then you ask the root cause of each one of those causal factors. You end up with a real structured route of going to find all of your root causes from each individual element of a failure. Timeline mapping is fantastic for you to be able to build up to the event. So when you lay out on the day, this is where the event happened, immediately before it this happened, immediately before that this happened, all the way back through the day, and trying to find all the things that have changed from the norm that may have contributed to your accident. The important thing is, as a business, you find what works for you, and then you make that part of your process that is repeatable, and you can demonstrate that you are using it through your business. 5 why is fantastic because, much like a child will, you just keep asking why until you get to the right depth of response. You know, I cut my hand, why? Because I used a knife on my hand, why? Because I was trying to cut a box, why? Because we have to cut boxes. But you can keep going through this until you actually say, why? I don't really know why I use that. I could have used a box cutter where I absolutely wouldn't have cut myself, and I'm going to change our process to only use this particular type of tool. Doesn't need to be the tool I was using. But if you go through that process properly, you will look at where you need to train people, where you need to update your processes. Even the plant and the equipment selection will come into that. You'll start looking at things like the culture of the business. You know, you look at the joys of, you know, why did the Titanic sink? It didn't sink because it hit an iceberg. It sank because people believed it was an unsinkable ship and never built it the right way. So being able to have that kind of wider conversation around what we expect as a business. And then leadership. Leadership underpins everything, making sure that we've got the right people in place that are going to drive our safety improvement, our performance forward. So always having that in place. But the key thing to all of this is find something that works for you, get it into your process, make sure that the right people are trained on how to use that process, and then you're going to be set for success. If it becomes something that you only think about once an accident has happened, you're constantly chasing the tail, it leads to a poor investigation. So looking at the ideal kind of systems now, as we mentioned, we have a health and safety platform that we use with our client base. That allows us to kind of hit all of those requirements within what we would say is the ideal standard for an accident investigation. So things like digital systems, you know, we have our own, there are others available. If you look at things like digital systems that make reporting easy, takes away all the barriers for people to be able to use them if they can report with their phone. You know, if people can pick their phone up and report, you won't have anybody saying, oh, where's the accident form? I don't know. Well, I'm just not going to bother. By taking away that barrier, it makes reporting that much easier. Mobile friendly. As I said, people have always got their phones around on them. You know, pick the phone up, report it. The report is done. That's all we ask of our individuals, is they report when they've got accidents and near misses and safety concerns. That's what we want from them. That's the intelligence that we want, that will help us to work with them to make lasting change in their business. Having the structured workflow guide so we know what's happening in our investigation step by step, it's repeatable and it's available. We want something where we can capture our witness statements in a systematic fashion, so we're not just trying to call questions off the top of our head. We have a pro forma that we can follow where we're capturing the information from our witnesses and we're asking all the right questions, so that when we come to looking at trying to find the root causes, we don't sit and think, I asked that person all of these questions and I forgot to ask this person half of those questions because I was in a rush or I forgot. Or if you've got it written down, it's going to mitigate all of those issues so that you can have a consistent approach across your investigation. Root cause analysis tools that will help you to identify those underlying issues. If you've got the tools in place to get that right, it means that you aren't going to miss any of those root causes. You're not going to miss any opportunities to continue to develop your business and your business processes. And then once you've identified them, as you said, action tracking, making sure that people know what needs to be done, who's going to be responsible for it, when it is due by, and making sure that if that is something that is a 6-month improvement, we're getting regular progress on that so that we know month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, how we're getting on. And we're not just leaving it to, it's not due for 6 months, so I won't look at it until month 5. And then what happens is the whole program gets pushed and then you're looking at a 12 months before something gets done. When you've got these systems in place, you're able to carry out things like trend analysis. You can start to look at patterns in your business. It might not be something that is immediately obvious when you look at your accidents as to whether or not there is a common cause or a common theme, but if you have those processes in place, trend analysis will allow you to learn as well. The real importance of all this, we can do this with good consistency. We can demonstrate the accountabilities in the right place in the business, and we have our audit trail that demonstrates what's been done and where. So we've got all of that repeat evidence. So if we do ever get any claims, legal action, all those things, we have all of that information in a system. It doesn't become lost. It hasn't sat on somebody's email because we've sent some emails around to work out the answers. That person's left and we've lost it. It's all in a system. It's retained by the business. And we know that if we need it, we can recall it at a later date. Okay. So the way our system works, whether that's on a PC, as you can see on the image on the right, and you can see down the bottom of here, we have our incident forms, and our near miss forms, and our good practice forms. So everybody on a computer can get access to them. On a phone or a tablet, you can get into the incident form, the near miss form, and the good practice form, all off the home screen of our app. So it's easy. We remove the barriers to reporting so that there is no excuse for people to decide they're not going to report because it was too complicated for them. We bring them into this and say, look, when we do this, here's a nice simple form for you to fill in. It's going to take you 30 seconds to provide the first report. You're using your phone, which means you can absolutely go and take photos of what's gone on. You can click on all of the buttons on here. So you start looking at the cause. You can start looking at what the effect is on the individuals. All of that is aligned to your RIDDOR report. So if you have to report under RIDDOR, you have all of the information. You don't need to look at what's been said and how that aligns to the regulations, statutory information. And moving to a digital type of system like this, we've got a client we've worked with for a number of years, and their near miss reporting used to be between 12 and 15 near miss reports per year. It was low, particularly for the size of the business that they were. Within 8 months of using that Genie process, 72 near misses were reported. And all of that reporting has led to process improvement, because when we looked at the reporting that came out of the system, we noticed there was a trend there. We noticed it was all around a particular one or two themes, which meant we were able to improve those processes from near miss reporting before an accident occurred. Okay, so we've been able to take the real good proactive processes from our investigations. We're not waiting for an accident before we carry out those investigations. So that company have now gone real best in class approach now through adopting that process. In our system, once somebody fills out one of those reports, whether it's an accident form or a near miss form, the system notifies the relevant management team, whether that is senior managers, whether that's business function managers, whether that's particular supervisors or managers for different areas. They get a notification that says that they've received a report, and the template allows for that flexibility of investigation. So, as I mentioned earlier, the HSG guidance on investigation asks for the likelihood of the reoccurrence down on the left there, and on the right hand side, the potential worst case scenario. And you've got 4 levels of investigation here. Now, through our system, we use 3 levels of investigation. So I include the minimal and the low together. And we have in here our minor investigation, our moderate investigation, and our serious and high potential investigations, all with timescales so everybody knows what is expected of them. And then through that pro forma, then they can complete that right level of investigation. But if it ever became a question with the health and safety exec, we can demonstrate that our investigation process is aligned to the HSG, and therefore we are demonstrating proportionality of our investigation based on this assessment. We have our investigation step by step, so we have a repeatable process there which provides our consistent standards. So we go through the full pro forma of kind of what we did for first aid, how long the person was off, who are our witnesses, how have we got their witness statements, what is the status of all of the plant and equipment, do we have all of our thorough examinations and our statutory checks in place, were all the operators qualified to do the job that they're being asked to do, what documentation have we reviewed. So based on that proportionality, we might only look at risk assessments, we may look at equipment records, induction records, competency records, and that is all based on how you set out your investigation process and the level of investigation you're going to carry out, right down to the assessment of the factors and the timeline, so you can put all of your information in, and then looking at our primary causes and our root causes, all of our conclusion of our investigation, any recommendations and any actions. And as you can see at the bottom of that right-hand form, there is a raise action button that immediately goes into our action tracker, so that within the system, you can see all the actions across the business, whatever process they've come from, whether it's inspection, audit, or from an accident investigation. All of that's in there, which means we have full visibility of the performance of the business. But that means then that we have our actions aligned to our investigation to have full traceability of our process. As I mentioned earlier, making sure that we're asking our witnesses the right information consistently. So we have a form there which looks at all the questions, all the information, what all the factors may have been around the investigation that we need to consider, things like weather and noise and lighting and housekeeping, all the things that we want to know what people's opinion from that were, so we can get an understanding of how the site was operating at the time. Right at the bottom of that, if it's relevant, you can pop sketches and diagrams in there to help give your investigator the intelligence of understanding where that witness's point of view has come from. So being able to pull all that together as well. And then lastly, as we've said, being able to take all that information and turn it into trend analysis so that we can start to learn from this. So on the left-hand side there, you can see all of our data in the system. With all of the hours worked, it gives us all of our accident frequency rates and incident frequency rates, which we use for things like tendering, internal reporting, benchmarking for industry, so that we can understand how a company is getting on in relation to the wider industry that they're working in. And at the bottom there, just a summary table that says how many RIDDORs, how many accidents have you had, how many minor incidents have you had, broken down by whether that's an annual period or a monthly period, depending on how you pull the report out of the system. The two images on the right show you how you can pull out that information. So if you were going to look at your data and you'd be looking at the kind of the big three on there, where you'd be looking at most of their injuries are classified as superficial injuries, so minor cuts, bumps and bruises. We've got sprains and strains featuring in there probably in second, and then property damage is the third thing that is reported in there. You look at what those causes are, so where's it come from? And a big one for them in that business is where we've got exposure to harmful substances. So if that was a company working with a lot of chemicals, we know we need to do something about that because they're using harmful substances regularly. When we look at the injuries on the right-hand side there, what we can see is there's an awful lot of hand injuries. So we need to be focusing on, when we look at our targeted safety campaigns, hand safety, how we're making sure that people aren't hurting themselves. Near misses, what are they broken down as? A lot of this is people reporting unsafe conditions. It isn't something that has happened, it's something where they've identified the unsafe condition, which demonstrates, for me, if I was looking at that, carrying out a bit of analysis, we have a company who are now doing very, very proactive reporting, because they're not reporting that something has happened, they're reporting that there was an unsafe condition. Okay. So we've got an awful lot of really good kind of reporting process there, and chemical safety features highly. So chemical near misses and chemical incidents are the two big factors there. So when we look at this business and we go in as a consultant and say, what should we focus on? Chemical safety, chemical standards, making sure that we're getting those processes right. And all of that comes out of our system automatically without anybody having to sit on Excel and type what was the body part that was hurt, what was the type of injury, and building your own kind of causal factor graphs and things. It's all automated so that we get to focus on delivering the improvements, not hunting through the data. As you said, one of the big things to focus on when we do our accident investigation, making sure we're closing the loop. Our feedback to our workforce is probably the most important part of all of this, because they are the ones who need to understand the context of what we've learned. So making sure that we're able to demonstrate where improvements are being made. If this goes away and we put some stuff in a document and we say we're going to put some actions in place, but we're going to do them in 3 months, for somebody on your shop floor, all that means is they aren't going to hear anything for at least 3 months. And then they might see an improvement, but they might not actually relate it to the accident report that was put in. So there's no context, there's no link for them. And as we all know, communication is the massive thing that we still, no matter what automated processes we put in place, people still need to talk. So making sure we can have those conversations where we're demonstrating the improvements, and that the improvements have come from them reporting. Okay, because that will encourage more reporting. If we encourage more reporting, we get more intelligence. More intelligence leads to more process improvement and change, which again leads to more improved safety. So the whole thing is then intrinsically linked. Okay, people will report more when they see that change happening. If they don't have context as to why things are going on around them, they are less likely to want to report. The final point I wanted to touch on with this session, we're doing quite nicely for time, I think, so that's good. The HSE in the last couple of weeks have opened up a consultation on RIDDOR. So our reporting of injuries, diseases, death, dangerous occurrences, all of those come under RIDDOR. Until June the 30th, there's an open consultation for people to go onto the HSE website and provide a response. I will be doing just that. What I would like to see from this, what I would like to see from this consultation, is that the reporting requirements are clearer. So one of the things that I always talk to clients about is that it would be much better if there were worked examples that people could understand the rationale of what's in the legislation, so you can understand why you're reporting or why you're not reporting. So it makes it easier when you have your own incident to align it to a scenario where you can work through the example to understand why you are or aren't reporting to the HSE. So it makes it less ambiguous. At the moment, the report is incident information only. I would like for that to be 2 stages. So much like what we've spoken about here today, being able to provide that initial report to the HSE, this is the incident that has happened, but also informing them on our investigation, what we've learned, what we found out, which gives them the intelligence so that they can look at this as a wider, entire UK, multiple sectors piece of information. But it also means that they're able to demonstrate that companies are doing the investigation process, which is part of the legislation, not just asking for the event. Okay, simpler, shorter forms. If anybody's had to go onto the HSE website to fill these forms out, they know that they are a nightmare. They are very difficult to understand. You answer questions and click the next page and realize that the next page has the context of what you were trying to talk about in the previous page. So it's very, very difficult to follow and understand how to do that. And my hope is that if we went to a 2-stage report and informing process, it would reduce the number of steps in the process and would make that a lot easier for people to use. I would also like in there the ability for companies to upload their own process documentation. We already do all of this information. We already provide all of this within our own businesses. So instead of having to go on the HSE's website and duplicate all of the information, it would be great if we could put that in there. And we know they're using things like AI. We know they're using things like technology to take from your report the information. That's completely possible, which means you don't have to report it twice. So again, it reduces the bureaucracy. It means that people are more likely to report because you've taken away all of the issues with it. What I don't want to see is to make changes that rely on an increase in volume of reporting rather than quality of reporting. So what I don't want is everybody to have to report on a wider scale of issues that are more minor. I want them to be able to focus on the serious issues that are there and get good information from them. So that's what I want to see. My advice would be, if you do have opinions or thoughts on RIDDOR, or if you've had to go through this anyway, share your experience with the HSE. This is one of those opportunities. They don't come around very often. RIDDOR in its current form has been around for a while now. This is going to be the next iteration. If we want to make sure we've got processes in place there, we've got our opinions in place there, then we have to make sure we tell them, otherwise it won't be factored in. Okay, so share your experiences. And we've got until June the 30th to be able to do that. Okay. So pulling this all together, and then we'll have a look at Q&A. So if anybody has got any questions or anything, do drop them in that Q&A box, and we'll catch them before we close the session. Similarly, if anybody has any questions after the fact, which is usually when I think of my questions, you have Paul's email there. You can send them over and we'll add them to the Q&A sheet as well. The important takeaways, all of this, reporting everything. So making sure that near misses are reported as well. Report all of it. It is all an opportunity to learn. We have to make sure that our processes are around preventing reoccurrence. It's not about us trying to seek blame. Okay, blame of a person, blame of a process, blame of a piece of equipment that we think doesn't work properly, but looking at how we can prevent this from occurring. So we're looking at this in a positive light, because that will help us drive our investigation the right way to make lasting change. Making sure we keep our investigations proportionate and practical. Don't undersell it if it needs a more serious investigation, but also don't be putting on a full spoke investigation for something that's quite minor and quite easy to solve and quite easy to put a lasting change into. We don't need to kind of over egg that. Okay, we just have to make sure it's all in place. Okay, we are trying to take our findings and turn them into real improvements. Where we need to update risk assessments, revise training, and implement additional controls. If that is relevant, if that is practical to your process, make sure they're done. Don't leave them on an action list never to be done. Make the change, communicate the change. Build a culture in your business where that reporting is valued. Thank people for making a report. Thank people for sending information in. Give them feedback on that investigation. People might not get the outcome that they want, but they will absolutely appreciate understanding the context of the investigation and how it's gone and what we've learned from it. That communication, that appreciation for people being involved in that process will lead to positive change, which means we will get a lasting value from our reporting process. That is how we will create that lasting improvement. So make sure that we've got that absolutely embedded from the start. Talk about it in your induction. Make sure people know from the start. Encourage visitors to report concerns if they have any. Take as much opportunity as you can from learning, put it all into this process, and then take all the learning out so that we've got full appreciation of what we're learning from. So we've got all the opportunities to learn. And that means that it's not all coming from the mind of one health and safety person or one person trying to work on a risk assessment. It is from lived experience of our processes. So if we do have any Q&A, I will have a little look and set with Paul. Things for you all to consider, you know, kind of the homework and the takeaway for yourselves. What challenges have you got within reporting in your business? You know, have you got a really robust process? Have you got a really weak process that needs changing? How do you ensure that investigations lead to real change? Is your process robust enough? Are people trained to carry out investigations? Do we even assign people within the business to carry out investigations? Or is it all on one health and safety person to do it, which personally isn't the way I like to see these things go. I think business managers who have the knowledge of their areas should be carrying out investigations, whether that's supervisors and line managers or business managers. We are then there as the expert to come in and provide the support. Okay, we can come in and provide that additional support as health and safety professionals. What tools and processes work well for you? As we talked about with the investigation process, making sure that you are using the right tool for you. Okay, as we said, the HSA don't stipulate a particular tool you should use for carrying an investigation, only that you carry it out to prevent reoccurrence of the incident. Okay, are your staff confident to report? That is beyond big. If they are all in fear that they're going to be blamed, you won't get a single report of any value, which means accidents go along not being reported, they're happening and you're not finding out about them. You're also not taking the opportunity to learn from them. Okay, how's that, Paulito? How are we doing for Q&A? As I said, we've got a couple of minutes. If anybody does want to drop a question in, we'll do so now, or drop Paul an email later on and we will catch everybody's questions when we do our wrap up later on in the week. I always like a session where there's no Q&A, it means you're giving everybody all of the answers.
We roughly have 6 more minutes, so if anyone wants to ask questions while we still have Liam in this session, feel free to drop them in the Q&A portion.
Excellent. Just on the 5-minute countdown, I think we might have actually done this bang on time, Paul. I won't lie to everybody, I thought this might be a 2-hour session by the time I get going on this subject. Excellent. If anybody does want to pop a question in, we'll circle back to it. But if we haven't, that's also absolutely fine. It means you've all taken on everything that's been said and there's nothing to follow up on. So the kind of final bit of these, we have an SOP that we've developed, which we use across a multitude of businesses. That is our safe operating procedure on how we carry out accident investigation. It defines who should be involved. It defines what level of documentation and information should be reviewed. There's a whole suite of information in there far beyond what we could put into an hour-long presentation. If anybody does want that to look at to potentially either implement into your business or just look at to compare with what you've got, let Paul know when you ask for your CPD certificate and we will make sure that we get that across to you as well. We've shown you a very small slither of what our Genie platform does. If anybody does want a demo or some more information on it, if you let us know today, there is a one-time £500 discount that we're going to provide to people who have been through this CPD session, but it will be this session only, not every single month. It's just as a launching of our CPD webinar process. And again, if you do want to take a look at this, let Paul know when you drop him an email and we'll arrange some time to talk about your business and how your business is operating currently and how Genie might help you kind of move on to the next level of your management process. So thank you for attending the session. Your CPD certs, if you want them, we'll get those over to you in the next couple of days. As we said, to use if you're uploading these things to WIOSH or to anybody anywhere else, or even internal learning processes within your business. This will also go onto the YouTube channel once we've taken it off of Microsoft and put it in there. So that'll be up there in the next couple of days. Our next session is going to be around health and safety prosecution sentencing guidelines, so people can understand that context. If there is anything that anybody wants to see on these CPD webinars, again, whilst you're all emailing Paul this list of things that you're all after, let him know what you want to see on these sessions as well, and we'll start to take some of that. And it might even be that you are the expert in one of these particular areas, in which case let us know and we will be happy to kind of try and find a spot where we can bring you in to talk about this as well, so it's not just me every month. If that is everything, then I'm happy to close that session down. We look forward to seeing everybody at the next session. We will send the invites out for those as well once the date and time is completely locked in. But thank you all very much.
Thank you everyone for joining. Take care.